Hi everybody, it's Kate Wakelin here from NeuroEndocrine Cancer Australia, and it's Friday, so we're doing our weekly Facebook Friday broadcast to you, as we've been doing every week for the past few months. So I am the NET Patient Support Nurse with Neuroendocrine Cancer, and just before I go on, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I am broadcasting to you all from, which is the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and just would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. One of the things I really love and appreciate about where I live is that it's very close to the Yarra River, which is where I love to go running, which and in the Woiwurrung language, that's called the Birrarung. So I am very grateful for where I am joining you from, and I know that you're joining me from all corners of Australia and indeed internationally via our Facebook group and also via YouTube later on. So it's lovely to be here, and you will notice that I do have a guest with me today. So I would like to introduce to you Sanchana Venkatesh, and I hope that I've got that pronunciation okay, Sanchana. Sanchana's actually joining us because today is National Bandana Day, which is the key event for Canteen. So Canteen are really close friends of ours at NeuroEndocrine Cancer Australia Central, because they support lots of the young people in our lives when we're affected by cancer. And so I'm really thrilled that Sanchana is actually able to join us today for this conversation, because I think it's a really important topic to address, and what better day to have a talk about this than National Bandana Day. So I know that a lot of people, when they think of Canteen, they think of young adults or young people with cancer, but the support that Canteen provide is far broader than that. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to have Sanchana along, because I know lots of us have young people in our lives. So just before I go on, I just wanted to let you know that Sanchana is she's the National Clinical Advisor at Canteen, and she's got a background in Educational and Developmental Psychology. So I think that's a really fantastic basis for this conversation moving forward. So thank you for joining us, Sanchana.
No worries. Thank you for having me, Kate.
Brilliant. And you're beaming to us via Sydney, aren't you, or from Sydney?
Yes, I'm based in Sydney. Yeah, even though we're a national office, I'm based in Sydney. Yeah.
Fantastic. But Canteen is, like you said, it's available nationally.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So I'm just wondering if you would be able to, I've got a few questions up my sleeve, and I'm hoping that the audience might also give me some questions along the way. If I just find the right piece of paper, that's probably a good start. Just for the purposes of transparency, everybody, we had a few technical problems, which I thought was that Sanchana's microphone wasn't working, and it was actually that I had my volume on my computer turned down, so it was all my all in my court. But yeah, that caught me by surprise. So I was a little bit flustered. I'm all good, but I was a little bit flustered. Anyway, so tell us about the key issues that young people with cancer face when cancer's part of their life, or there's someone close to them with cancer. Sanchana?
So a lot of the times when we see young people at Canteen who are faced with, who have a parent or a sibling who've been diagnosed with cancer, one of their biggest issues is obviously not understanding what's happened. So not understanding the diagnosis, not understanding the prognosis, the treatment. So information, or the lack of it, tends to be a big worry for a lot of the young people that we see, and then not knowing how and where to find that information. Apart from that, they also then worry about, what if I bring up cancer again? Is it going to worry my parents a bit more? Is it going to stress them out a bit more? So they worry about that. They also worry about, the fact that their friends and other peers don't understand what they might be going through. We also see a lot of them struggling with school sometimes. So even though they'll continue to attend, they struggle with focus and concentration at school or uni or TAFE. And a lot of them tend to want some respite from, just from the stress that they're experiencing and the changes that have hit them. A lot of the times also what we notice is there tends to be a change in their roles in the family. So they sometimes have additional responsibilities. If one parent has been diagnosed with cancer and then has to undergo treatment for that, the young person might have to take on additional responsibilities, have to help out around the house a bit more. And so then juggling that along with their, what used to be their normal, so which is school or extracurricular activities or all of that, becomes quite stressful and overwhelming for them. Additionally, we see, the young people then they also report increased levels of anxiety, stress, guilt, just a fear about all the uncertainty, and just not knowing how to cope with all these feelings at different times. They sometimes feel like their problems might be trivial in comparison to, in comparison to the parents' cancer or their siblings' cancer. So, say for example, a young person is experiencing bullying at school. They might actually not want to talk about it because they feel like it's trivial compared to something like cancer. And I guess the research shows that a lot of young people who are impacted by cancer are actually 3 to 6 times more likely than their peers to experience significant levels of distress as well.
Mm-hmm. Sanchana, something that so I live with young people. If we were a family where cancer was present, I would certainly be ringing you about them. But something that I notice about my young people is that compared to when they were little and they would tell me everything about what they were worried about and what was going on in their lives. Like I've got one who's done some year 12 exams in the last couple of weeks, and how's it going? How was school? Fine.
Good.
How's all of your work with your deadlines, and how do you feel like you sort of, is there anything we can do? I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything, and it's really unusual. I've got a really expressive youngest daughter, and she's normally really, it's a bit of a change for me. And I guess when we're parenting young people, or when we've got young people in our lives, we're all changing and noticing the changes and dealing with the changes. But I wondered how we would tell, like if we've got a young person who's doing that classic I'm fine, and maybe not wanting to worry their family member about what they're thinking about or what they're scared of. How do we tell, like, what are some of the behaviours or indications that our young person might be struggling a bit or finding it a bit tough?
So you're right. I think a lot of teenagers, you will get that sort of one-word answer, short sentences as responses. Generally, though, what we say is, again, just notice if there's any sort of significant changes compared to their normal behaviors. So again, as teenagers, they are going to spend some more time in their room compared to when they were little. They are going to, be a little bit more irritable and things like that. But if it's a lot more than usual, so if you're noticing that they're spending way too much time in their room, not really coming out and engaging with their family, they're more withdrawn even from peers, because again, we know peers are very important to them. So if they're more withdrawn from their peers, and this I would say even like, on social media and stuff like that, so not maybe just face to face, but even if they're not chatting with their peers, via text or Facebook or whatever else, that is also another sign that they're probably a bit more withdrawn and something else is going on there. Where some of them get, snappier than usual, they're more irritable than usual. And apart from that, some of the anxious ones might start to look for reassurance a lot more. So, checking behaviors, wanting to know, hey, is everything okay? Is everything okay? Almost wanting you to tell them that things will be fine. And if they're starting to do that more than usual, those might be some signs. Additionally, your basic things like, significant changes to their sleep or their appetite. Are they looking more tired than usual? Are their grades changing as well? So again, how are they going at school? So that can also be a good indicator. It helps to have open communication with the school as well, because again, that's where they spend most of their time. So teachers might actually be able to notice if something's a bit amiss, especially if they're spending 6 hours a day with them. They'll start to notice over a period of time, oh, actually, this kid's a lot quieter than usual, or this kid's more disruptive, or they're not handing in their assignments as regularly as they were. So those might be some signs to sort of look for, to sort of get the big picture of things and see if there's any changes, and any significant changes to initiate that conversation with the young person.
So it sounds like you would recommend talking to the kids' school, the young person's school, to let them know and get more support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, sorry.
Okay, no, that's good.
I was going to say, I guess when cancer has impacted, impacted your life or impacted the family, it is important to have that sort of support network there. So I think it is hard to do it just individually or just within that nuclear system. You do need that support if you can. And so whether that is from the child's school, whether it is from extended family, that's, or the community, no matter what your networks are, it's always good to have that support there.
So another question was that how much to tell the young person, and especially I guess if you've got one like mine might be at the moment, where they're not actually volunteering information, or maybe they're not asking questions, but it might feel like they're a little bit sort of shut down or not. Maybe they're too scared to ask. And so how much information, what should we be sort of telling young people in our lives about what's going on cancer wise? And
So again, from what we see, young people want information. Okay, so they want to know, but again, I think like a lot of them they do struggle to ask, and they don't know how to ask sometimes. So what's a good starting point is actually asking them, like sitting down with them, making sure it's a safe space, asking them what is it that they actually know about cancer. So if there's anything they know, and then you can try and clarify any misunderstandings or misconceptions that they might have. Providing them information as much as possible. If you know what your diagnosis is, if you know what the treatment is, if you know what the prognosis is, it's important to be honest and open about that with them. But also then, and constantly checking with them if they've got any questions or if they understand that. On our Canteen website, as well as in our offices, we've got we've got the Now What books, and so they're actually really good. They're a really good resource that you can actually read with your young people to facilitate conversations. So there are separate books for what to do when your parent is dealing with your parent's cancer. There's one on dealing if your parent's cancer can't be cured, dealing with the death of a parent or a sibling from cancer, as well as when you've been diagnosed with cancer as well. So for young people that have a diagnosis, what to do with that as well. So they're really good books which can start up that conversation within the family as well. And it gives like your practical information. It gives information about feelings and all the different feelings that everyone experiences during that time, as well as things that you can as a family that you can talk about. Alternatively, if young people are too nervous or just even overwhelmed about asking questions, one of the suggestions from someone on my team was you can actually have a question box in the family. So actually have this box sitting there where where you tell the kids in the family, just put your questions in there about whatever comes up. Because again, at that moment, they might not have questions or they might not know what to ask. So it's like whatever comes up for you, just put those questions in there. And then, at such and such time during the week, we can all sit down as a family, pick out those questions and have a conversation as a family about it. So what it does is it takes the pressure of voicing it out in in that moment. It's a very inclusive way of having the entire family participating in that conversation, as well as sharing information without it necessarily being directed at one person. And so that's a different way of doing it, I think, especially for the young people that are a little bit more like, I don't want to talk about it right now.
I love that suggestion. It's really clear. Sanchana, you just mentioned a little bit earlier about prognosis. We know with neuroendocrine tumours, that's a really sticky subject because it's really difficult to know what the path might look like in these sorts of cancers. We know we've got so many people who've said to us that they were told to get ready for, unfortunately, a very short and grim outlook, so maybe they were told they had something like a couple of months or a short number of years, and actually that was 10 years ago, and they're going and playing 18 holes of golf still. So it's a difficult situation even for us as adults to get our heads around. Have you got any suggestions for parents or for extended family members when they're dealing with a prognosis that's so uncertain. So they don't want to freak their young person out and make them worried about something that might not be a problem for a long time. But also, you know, I think that you suggested, and we sort of know that being honest is really important. Can you give us any thoughts about how to manage that really tricky situation?
Yeah, and I think so, you know, that is, I guess that's a situation of dealing with uncertainty basically, and tolerating that discomfort that comes with the not knowing. You know, again, in those situations, I'd recommend being as honest as you can about it, but being upfront that, you know, this is the prognosis they've given me. So they're saying 2 months and still we don't know. So being okay, and modeling that as parents, modeling that as adults, that it is uncomfortable sitting with this uncertainty and that not knowing, and still, you know, it doesn't mean that we need to be sad all the time. It doesn't mean that, you know, we need to not enjoy life, you know, or not try and continue life as it was. The reality is there'll be good days and bad days for the whole family. And so even though there might be that anticipatory grief, that, you know, anticipating that this might come to an end, at the same time, it's important and it's okay to make the best of those good days, as well as it's okay to feel angry and sad on bad ones when thoughts come up of, you know, this might end at some point. And I think, like the big thing is to be upfront about the not knowing and the fear of the unknown, and that they're also in the same situation, I think. And so, you know, it is a bit of I guess the best way to put it is probably going to be a bit of a roller coaster at those points, because you just don't know. And I know sometimes young people have said to us, like, oh, you know, we've been waiting, like first time dad was diagnosed in year 6, and we've been preparing since then, and now it's finally happened, and like 5 years later they've died. And so it's almost like for them, they're like, well, we got used to it at the start thinking that they were going to die there, but now, you know, and now when it's happened, well, at least we've done all of this, we've spent the time together with them. It doesn't make it less sad, but at least they were expecting it almost, as compared to, I guess, the like just not knowing and just not spending that time or just not doing anything about it. So I would still be, it is important to, as much as you know, and as much as you know, age appropriate as it is for the child to know, it would be good to talk about it and to validate that uncertainty and the anxiety that comes with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's I think some really wise comments in there. So thank you, Sanchana. I'm just wondering more generally, what can the adults around, you know, what can we do as adults around our young people to help them cope with, you know, a cancer in their lives or in someone that they know?
I guess first and foremost, it's important, and you know, when cancer impacts somebody, it changes everything at the start. But what's important is to try and continue normal routines as much as possible. So, for example, school or uni or TAFE, you know, it's important that that kids still continue to do that as much as possible, because sometimes that is their space for them. That is their normal routine that they're used to, and whatever else is possible around it as well. So, if they do have an extracurricular activity here and there, as much as possible, if they can continue to do that, continue to do that. You know, apart from that, listening to them, encouraging them to talk about how they feel, letting them know that it's okay to feel all the feelings is very important. And I think, again, as parents and adults, to model that, you know, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel anxious about all the unknowns, because again, parents sometimes go, well, I don't, you know, with my diagnosis, I don't want to show my child that I am anxious about it or I'm upset about it, because then they will get more anxious. Similarly, the child themselves is thinking that they're like, I'm worried about mom and dad, but I don't want them to know about this. You know, I don't want them to know that I'm worried about them, because then they'll worry about me. So it's so important to model that it is okay to feel all these feelings, and it is okay. And again, like as adults, to help them is to be open and honest with them, let them know about, you know, whatever changes are expected as well, to let them know about that. So for example, if you're going to chemo or you're going to be in hospital for a few days, let them know about it, and being upfront about what that's going to involve, you know, being upfront about what, you know, okay, mom, you know, we're going to probably lose our hair, and what else is going to happen? I'm going to probably be more fatigued. So I think reassuring them about that is helpful, but also giving them time to process that information, because it can be a lot of information. So give them time to process it, and assure them that they will be looked after as well. And continue to help them maintain their friendships, see their friends, and also, obviously, if they need extra counseling support, trying to do that as well. Whether it's through the school, whether it's through services like ours, getting that extra counseling support sometimes can be quite helpful as well for them. But also trying not to make promises that maybe you can't keep. So sometimes I think as parents, we want them to feel okay. We want kids to feel okay, and we say things like, "Oh, don't worry, nothing's going to happen to mom and dad. We'll be fine." And those are guarantees that we cannot necessarily keep. So it's best not to make promises that we can't keep, but instead being open and honest about it all, and just listening. And I think, I always go back to validating feelings no matter what. I think, all the feelings are appropriate. Behaviors are probably not, like, if there are some unhelpful behaviors, you still work on those, but in terms of feelings, all the feelings are valid.
Yeah. And so I guess that's something that some people sort of struggle with, is if the person's kind of acting out or stretching the boundaries, that's what they're programmed to do, isn't it? Like they're pushing those boundaries, but if they're acting some of that stuff out in an unhelpful way, or what you feel like might not be, the most productive or helpful way, I think sometimes people can feel a little bit hesitant about setting firm boundaries when there's a difficult thing going on in the family, and it might be like, can you give us any pearls of wisdom about how to manage that kind of stuff? I know that's just, it's complex and tricky.
Yeah, it is complex, but I can, I guess, like the most succinct way is probably acknowledging so say, for example, there is a young person that's acting out, rather than straight away yelling about the behavior, is trying to figure out and acknowledge the feeling that's underlying that behavior. So actually saying to them, I can see that you are quite anxious or you're quite upset, which is why you are lashing out like this, or naming the emotion that's underlying it, especially if that's not the norm. Like if that's not what they normally do, and they are, they're being really rude, or they're skipping school, or they've started taking drugs and alcohol or whatever else, it is acknowledging the feeling that's underlying it. And then after that, because once you validate that emotion, once you understand that, they're more likely to sit down and listen and talk as well. Whereas the minute we go in as adults with, what are you doing? This is wrong. Just targeting the behavior as well. They're going to get defensive. They're going to lash back, and so you don't get anywhere. So acknowledging and validating the emotion first, and then going, and still, like, I can see that you're in pain. I can see that you're anxious, or you're upset, or you're angry, and still it's not okay to do this. How can I help you, and what can we do around this? And then depending on each family, of course, if it's a major issue, then you might have your consequences there. But yeah, I think starting that conversation, having that open communication, but validating their feelings is quite important. But I think, we all get caught up in, oh my God, they did this behavior. And so we want to target the behavior, forgetting that there was probably some emotion underlying all of that.
I wanted to ask you, and thank you. I wanted to ask you, I think we've focused, and this is probably my bias because, the age of the person who I was thinking about if this was my situation. But I know that Canteen also work with people right up into young adulthood. So, there's a huge change between, an 18-year-old and a 25-year-old, and in terms of them achieving independence and career, and all of the adulting that we're trying to encourage them to grow towards. I wondered how things change in terms of dealing with a family member's cancer diagnosis when young people are approaching that later end of young adulthood.
Yeah. I think so. One of the things I think we've noticed is the young people in that age group as well. They technically between 12 and 24, they also get missed out a lot when a parent is diagnosed with cancer, because they're not actually present. For example, they're not present at the hospital. They're not, they're not there. And I think sometimes staff forget that there might be a young person at home that's also struggling with this. And so, in terms of in terms of supporting them, one of the big things, again, with what they find is that sort of peer support. Sometimes finding other people that understand what they're going through can be quite helpful for a lot of the young people. And again, with Canteen, like we have, that's one of our big things is the peer support in the programs. And a lot of the young people find that when they connect with other young people who have similar experiences, it really helps them. It helps them connect. It helps them feel validated, and it definitely helps in terms of how they then also deal with the family situation sometimes, and deal with their parents' diagnosis that way. And I think like we've got. So this is mainly for young people whose parents have got cancer, and not young people who are patients themselves, right?
Yeah, although we do have, it was interesting when I put the message up about you coming on today. I did have one or two people who were in that younger age group who said, "Oh, I didn't realise that you guys went up to." And we'll talk a bit more about Canteen services in a second. But there may well be some young people who have neuroendocrine cancer who might get in touch with them as well. So a bit of both when we're talking about that sort of the upper age range of who you work with.
Yeah, because it does throw their lives, like it can throw them. Like if there's a massive change in their life at that time, because already like things like year 12 or when they finish their year 12 exams, and they're sometimes looking forward to a career, and then like uni and career and all of that, and then cancer comes into their lives, either if it's affected them or it's affected a parent. It can change so much, because things like goals, like they might have wanted to move out of home, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in a carer role for their parent or caregiver, and that is quite that can be quite distressing for them. And again, this is where sometimes things like counseling and providing individual support, helping them navigate the systems as well, is something quite helpful, because not most people don't know all the systems out there, and also all the supports that might be out there. So sometimes that having someone who can do that, who can help them go, okay, you know what, this is where you can get some support for yourself as a carer, or this is where you can go and get some support in terms of uni support. We can talk to the university, get extra support for you there. And it's like I said earlier, that having a network almost, as opposed to trying to do it on your own. I think that's what's helpful in the even in those ages. I think the older age group as well, having that network and having that connection with others is probably what's helpful and helps them get through it.
I think that really brings us really beautifully to the next question, which I had for you, which is, tell us about Canteen. I think, as I said, a lot of people, when I talk to them and I suggest Canteen, they think, oh yeah, but I'm not a teenager with cancer. I think probably the image that lots of us have had in our heads over the years is a bald young person, but actually it's much broader than that. And I'd love it if you could just share with us some of the things that Canteen offer to young people, more broadly.
And you're right. I think a lot of people, there's that misconception that Canteen is just for young people who have had cancer themselves, and I think that's how it started. But so the services we offer, we see 12 to 25-year-olds who are impacted by cancer. So that could be, they themselves have cancer or have had cancer. They have a parent or a sibling with cancer. And occasionally we'll see some, if they've had a grandparent, sometimes that's, if there was a close caregiver, for example, who is a grandparent or a foster carer, then again, it's still in a parent capacity. So, they have been impacted by cancer in some way. We offer counseling and individual support services. So this is with, this can be face-to-face, over the phone, as well as via Zoom now. And so, we have social workers, psychologists, counselors, and OTs who do that sort of support, or who do provide that kind of support. Additionally, we also have an online counseling team, and we had this pre-COVID. So it was a relatively okay transition for us, for the rest of the state teams, to sort of also transition to a bit of that online or digital support. And so, yes, so we've had online counseling services for a while, and that also includes web chat. So some young people prefer communicating just via chat as opposed to, face-to-face or on the phone. So there's also the web chat option there for them. We also have an online platform and community called Canteen Connect. And so this is where young people just go on, and there's forums, there's discussion forums, blog posts. They just engage and connect with one another. We also have, we have staff from the online counselling team that also monitor all of this, and will reach out to any young person that seems to be in need and organise separate counselling if they need that. We also now have an app more recently, so there is a Canteen Connect app as well. So because obviously young people are now more on their phones than they would be on desktops. Additionally, we've also started parent support. So earlier when we were talking about what can parents do, so we do have parenting support as well. So parenting support, so support for parents and how to parent their child while they're going through cancer themselves as well. And so this is where some of those tricky questions of how do I talk to my child about this? How do I continue to parent my child who is misbehaving while I'm going through this? How do I set boundaries? That we can work with families like that, with the parents themselves on issues like that. So we've got that sort of parent support element as well now, and there's also a Parent Connect online community for parents to sort of to go on and engage as well. Additionally, big thing is the peer support and the programs that we've got. So we have, across the country, we run recreational based programs for young people to just connect with other young people who get it, as well as overnight psychosocial programs. So these are these are a bit more specific and skills based around grief and loss or survivorship, as well as dealing with coping skills and emotion regulation skills and things like that. So they're a bit more psychosocial in content than some of our recreational or fun programs. Unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of these have had to stop, but we've adapted some of them to online. But so obviously they're not overnight anymore. They're done they're done probably in chunks. It's been interesting though, because some of our recreational programs and some of our drop-ins that we used to have at our centres, now doing it online, it's actually had we've managed to have like a further reach almost. So some of the kids in rural and regional Australia who probably couldn't come for like a 2-hour drop-in on a weeknight have been able to sort of drop in online, which has been quite nice to see. So going forward, it'd be interesting to see how we try and blend both. And then in addition to this, we also have, more specifically for patients, we've got our robots program, which is, I say robots, it's not an actual robot. When I first came, I thought it was a nice fancy robot, but it is, it's like an iPad where if a young person is undergoing treatment and can't attend school, so there is this robot sort of set up in the school system where then they can still learn via distance, and so they don't miss out on too much school. And we also have education and career support for young people that are patients themselves. So that's again usually in that sort of 16 to 25 age group where they can get that added support and what sort of services they can be linked up with, what careers might be suited for them. We've got ECS workers specifically for that who will work with the patients and provide them with extra information and support around that.
Wow, that's so comprehensive. That's just amazing. And I have to say, I was at a conference. Remember conferences when we used to be able to go?
Yes.
I was at a conference last year and I saw one of those robots, and it is seriously very cool. Like it's
very cool.
wheels, isn't it?
Yes.
And the webcam is capturing whatever the iPad is looking at, and the young person who's in the hospital gets to kind of really see what the teacher is teaching, but it's also interact with their classmates, because they can kind of, it's like having a like having a Zoom call, but they're taking the laptop or the iPad around all around, and like even out to the recess and lunchtime and things like that. So such an amazing program that it's not quite so relevant to NETS, but it really captured my imagination. And I just thought great.
I know, technology is awesome.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how we've all had to adapt to COVID and the way that it's changing the way that we have to live our lives. But I think there's some things that we might actually hang on to after COVID is hopefully a distant memory in the not too down the track. But there'll probably be ways in which this changes all of the way we live our lives, and we might do things a bit differently from here on in. So it's great to hear that Canteen was, look, it's no surprise that you were pretty tech savvy to start with, because, you know, it's young people, but
yeah,
actually really great to hear that that's might have increased the availability of services for people in rural areas, which I think is a really important thing. So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
there haven't been a great number of questions in the feed, which is not surprising, because I think people will need to sort of sit back and listen to this one and you know, absorb this information. And I think you've given us some really fantastic things to think about. How would people get in touch with someone like you if they wanted to know more about managing their young person, or, you know, having a young person in their lives when their cancer's in the scene?
So if you go to canteen.org.au, that will give you your state offices if you need to contact the state office. Or there is also a 1-800 number, which I do not know off the top of my head. So
we'll put it in notes. So no one is sitting there with their pen poised right at this moment. It's a little work to read these numbers out on screen anyway. So I'll make sure that I put the contact details for Canteen in the notes. So
there's a contact form on there, so you can just go on to Canteen like online, and then you can find the contact form and select. Once you select your state and territory, it'll be it'll get filtered to each state and territory if you need, or there's a number over there as well. So
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming along. And I did want to give a plug to Bandana Day. You can see Sanchana's got one on her head, but actually I ordered one, and look, they're not all really like I think back in the day when I was working in hospital system a bit more, they were very much more bandana-y looking, but like this one's it's really pretty. So like they've got a whole heap of variety. But the other thing I was just going to, and it's just out of reach, so you just have to wait for me while I whiz out of shot for a sec. But I also they're also selling
the face masks. Yes.
Cool. I was pretty happy with that one. It's got a little extra filter in the inside that I can pull out and wash, and so anyway, I'll make sure I put the details for Bandana Day and on the screen. And if you're looking for something, you know, colourful or pretty to put around your neck, or you need to stock up on some something for your face, then I know Canteen's a fantastic organisation to be supporting alongside NeuroEndocrine Cancer Australia, but I know that it's not, you know, I think we have some really fantastic partnerships with other cancer charities. So I'm really thrilled to have you along, Sanchana, and thank you so much for taking the time and answering all of those questions and giving us those fantastic tips and information. I'm just going to sort of jump to some housekeeping, just very, very briefly, a couple of plugs for the next week or two that wanted to make sure the community knew about. The first thing is that next week on the 5th of November, because it's November already almost, we've got our Merkel cell carcinoma webinar. And a lot of people don't even know that Merkel cell carcinoma is a type of neuroendocrine cancer. It's a really rare one, but we are running a webinar because we know that there are people who are living with this who will need that information, and also a bunch of health professionals who are really keen to increase their knowledge in this area. So if you know someone, or you've been diagnosed with Merkel cell carcinoma, or you've got a health professional who you think might be interested in this, the webinar is free, and it's on the 5th of November, and I'll make sure the registration for that is in the notes. The other thing, just two more things I wanted to mention. The first thing is that on Friday, which is the 6th, we've got Grace Kong, Dr. Grace Kong, who is a nuclear medicine physician from Peter Mac, who is involved in the peptide receptor radionuclide therapy, or lutate, a lot of people know it as, and also the PET scans. Grace has been really generous with us and agreed to come along to a Facebook Friday, and we can do some Q&A with her, which I think is really fantastic. So I'm very much looking forward to having her along next week. The other thing that's right on our doorsteps is World Net Cancer Day, which is the 10th, Tuesday the 10th of November, and on that day we've got another webinar, which is it's our State of the Nation webinar, and it's due to COVID we can't go flying around Australia and running events in person, but we will be beaming into each of the individual treatment centres in each state. So over in Perth, across to Adelaide. We're certainly going to be dropping in at Peter Mac in Melbourne, Royal North Shore in New South Wales, and then whizzing up to Queensland through the power of the internet, and checking in with the specialists in each state to talk about the research projects they're doing, the innovative treatments they're developing, and what's new on the scene in each state. So you're all really welcome to come along to that. That's also free, and we'd love, the more the merrier. So yeah, I'll make sure the registration details are on the screen. So once again, thank you to Sanchana for joining us today. I know that the community are so appreciative to you for sharing your time with us. This video will go up onto YouTube later, so that if you've got family and friends who are not watching as part of the Facebook group discussion today, then that will be available on YouTube a little bit later on this afternoon. So I think that's probably it until I press the end button and remember the other things I should have said, but that'll do us for now. So thanks, Sanchana, and thanks everyone for joining us today. It's a long weekend for Melbourne, so so those of you who are in Melbourne, we're celebrating because we can actually leave our homes now, which is very exciting. But also with Melbourne Cup, a lot of people have public holiday on the Tuesday, and a lot of people are taking Monday off, and that's me too. So I will be out of the office on Monday and Tuesday. So if you ring me, you'll get my voicemail. But back in the office on Wednesday. So. Looking forward to reconnecting then. So thanks everyone. That's enough for me yabbering on. Thank you so much, Sanchana.
Thank you for having me.
We'll look forward to seeing everybody next Friday.